Tom never thought he would ever step foot on another planet. He was just a technician from Earth. He fixed machines, checked wires, and made sure translators didn't break down during meetings. He was not a soldier, not a hero, and not anyone special. But now, here he was, standing in the grand hall of the Vereen Summit, a giant space station floating between worlds. It was a place where leaders of many alien races met for peace, trade, and talks. Tom was part of the human team, there to help with technical problems. Most people didn't notice him. They looked at the leaders, the generals, and the scientists. Tom liked it that way. He stayed quiet, did his job, and avoided attention. One evening after a long day, Tom got a call from his small wrist device. Translator Unit 7 in the Rhinari Hall is down. Urgent repair needed. Technician Tom, please respond. Tom sighed and grabbed his toolkit. The Rhinari Hall was at the top level, quiet, beautiful, and heavily guarded. The Rhinari were one of the most powerful alien races in the galaxy. They were tall, elegant, and had soft, glowing skin that shimmered like starlight. Their leader, Queen Zera, was known across the stars for her wisdom and calm strength. Tom had never seen her in person. He didn't think he ever would. He reached the Rhinari Hall and spoke to one of the guards. The guard checked his ID and let him in. Inside, the room was quiet and peaceful. Blue flowers floated in air, strange glowing vines lined the walls, and soft music played from no visible source. In the center stood a large translation unit, broken. Tom walked over and knelt beside it, opening the panel. As he worked, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned slightly and froze. Queen Zera herself stood there watching him. She was tall, graceful, and dressed in flowing silver robes. Her eyes were calm but curious. "You are the human fixing our machine?" she asked in a soft, musical voice. Tom stood up quickly and almost dropped his tools. Yes. Ma'am. I mean, Your Highness. Yes, I'm the technician." She tilted her head slightly. "You are nervous?" Tom scratched the back of his neck. "Well, I didn't think I'd be meeting a queen today." She smiled, just a little. "Then today must be special." Tom bent down again and focused on fixing the wires. After a few minutes, he managed to get the translator working. It made a soft beep and the screen lit up. "There you go," he said, standing up. "Good as new." Zera looked at the device, then at him. "You work with skill and care. That is rare." Tom shrugged. "I just try to do a good job." There was a long, quiet moment. The room felt peaceful, but a little heavy, too. Maybe it was the Queen's eyes. Or maybe it was how close they were now. Tom, trying to lighten the mood, suddenly smiled and joked, "Well, if you ever need a human husband, marry me, Your Highness." He meant it as a silly joke. But Queen Zera looked at him, not with surprise but with calm seriousness. She stepped closer, her voice soft. "I was hoping you'd say that." Tom blinked. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Was she serious? Before he could speak again, 2 Rhinari guards entered the room. Zera turned to them and said, "Leave us." They obeyed without question. Now it was just the 2 of them. Zera walked to a bench and sat down. She looked at him and said, "Please sit." Tom sat slowly. "I have watched humans for many years," she said. "Many speak loudly. Many chase power. But you are quiet, careful, kind. You fix things that others ignore. Tom rubbed his hands together nervously. I just do my job. She nodded. Exactly. That is why I notice you. Rhaenyra, law says our queen must choose a life bond with someone from a race that holds soul spark. I have searched for it. She looked directly at him. I believe you have it. Tom's heart pounded. Wait, this isn't a joke? Jera smiled gently. No. Tom stood up, confused. But I'm not important. I'm just a worker. She rose as well. And yet you are honest, gentle, brave enough to speak freely before a queen. He shook his head. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to be funny. I understand, she said. But some things are not just chance. Sometimes a path opens, when we are not even looking. Tom didn't know what to say. He looked around the quiet hall. Everything felt unreal. I don't know if I'm ready for this, he admitted. Queen Jera nodded. You do not need to answer now. I will give you time. But no. You have already done more than you think. You have brought light into a place where there was silence. She stepped forward and gently handed him a small crystal disc. It glowed faintly in his palm. This is my token, she said. Keep it or return it when you choose. Either way, you have my respect. Then she turned and walked toward the far doors, her long silver robes flowing like water. Tom stood alone in the center of the hall, holding the glowing token, heart racing, head spinning. A joke had turned into something very real. He had no idea what to do next. Tom couldn't sleep that night. He lay on his bed in the small crew quarters, staring at the ceiling. The glowing crystal disc from Queen Jera rested on the table beside him. It still pulsed softly, like a quiet heartbeat. Every time he looked at it, his chest tightened. Did she really mean it? He had only made a silly joke. Marry me, Your Highness, he had said, but she hadn't laughed. She had whispered, I was hoping you'd say that. And she gave him this, her token. Was this how things worked between species, between queens and workers? Tom didn't understand it. He didn't feel special. He fixed machines, not galaxies. But something about Jera's words stayed with him. The next day, Tom reported for work as usual. But everywhere he went, Rhaenyra guards seemed to follow him, quietly, at a distance. No one said anything, but their eyes were always watching. During lunch, his friend Rhaena, a fellow human technician, noticed his nervous mood. You okay, Tom? You look like you saw a ghost. Tom looked around and spoke quietly. I think I proposed to someone yesterday, Rhaena laughed. You? Who? One of the food staff. Tom shook his head. Queen Jera. She stopped chewing. You're serious? Tom nodded slowly. I was fixing a translator. She was there. I made a dumb joke. And she said she hoped I'd say that. Rhaena stared at him for a full 5 seconds, then whispered, What did you do? I said nothing. She gave me a glowing disc. Rhaena blinked. Tom, that's a Rhaenyra soul mark. It's part of their bonding ritual. I know, he whispered back. That's why I'm panicking. Rhaena leaned closer. You need to figure this out fast. If you accept it's not just marriage, you'd become part of the royal family. Some people won't like that. Tom already knew that. He had seen the way some Rhaenyra nobles looked at him in the halls, like he was dirt under their feet. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he said. But maybe it was meant to, Rhaena said softly. Later that afternoon, Tom received a message. It was simple. You are invited to the Queen's private garden at sunset. Jera. Tom stared at the words for a long time. Then, without knowing why, he stood up and went. The Queen's garden was not like Earth gardens. There was no soil. The plants floated in the air, held up by invisible fields. Soft light sparkled through the leaves. Strange birds made gentle music with their calls. Jera stood near a glowing fountain, watching a group of floating flower orbs swirl in the air. "You came," she said without turning. "I wasn't sure if I should." She turned to face him. "Yet here you are." Tom stepped forward. "I've never had a queen invite me to a garden before." Jera smiled faintly. "And I have never had a human offer to marry me before." They stood in silence for a moment. Tom spoke first. "I was just trying to be funny." "I know," Jera said. "But I took it seriously." "Why me?" he asked. "I'm not a leader. I'm not rich. I'm not even brave." She walked slowly beside the fountain. "I have known warriors. I have known rulers. But you fixed something broken, not just with your tools, but with your heart." Tom frowned. "It was just a translator." Jera looked at him kindly. "And yet you made me smile." She paused. "In Rhinari tradition, the queen may choose any mate, if they are true of soul. I saw something in you, Tom, not power, not fame, just peace. You did not try to impress me. You were simply yourself." Tom looked down. "That doesn't sound very special." "It is rare," she said. They sat on a smooth stone bench. Jera gently touched the glowing disk he still carried. "You do not need to decide now, but I ask you to think, not just about what you are, but what you could become." Tom looked at the disk. "What happens if I say yes?" "You would become my bondmate, my partner. You would help guide the Rhinari. You would be part of something greater." Tom's heart beat faster. "And if I say no?" Jera looked up at the sky. "Then I will respect your choice. You may return to your life. I will not speak of it again." She stood, her silver robe shining in the garden light. "I chose you because I saw light in you," she said. "But a light must choose whether it wants to shine." She walked away, leaving Tom sitting alone once again. That night, Tom walked through the quiet halls of the summit. Thoughts swirled in his head like stars in a storm. He passed by Rhinari nobles, and some whispered as he walked by. Others looked at him with cold eyes. He even saw one make a mocking gesture with their hands. He realized something important. If he chose to accept the Queen's offer, many people would not be happy. But he also remembered her voice. "You made me smile. You fixed something. Broken. You have soul spark." No one had ever spoken to him like that before, not with power, not with charm, but with truth. He returned to his room and picked up the disk. It glowed warmer now, as if sensing his touch. He still wasn't sure what he was going to do, but he knew one thing. The Queen had seen something in him, and for the first time, he was starting to see it too. 3 days had passed since Tom visited Queen Jera's garden. The glowing disk still sat on his table, but now it didn't feel so strange. He had started looking at it differently, not as a joke, not as a mistake, but as a choice. Tom still hadn't said yes or no, but his heart was leaning closer to something it had never felt before. belonging. Yet outside his small world, a quiet storm was building. In the upper chambers of the Rhinari Palace aboard the summit station, Lord Havel, a high-ranking noble of the Rhinari court, walked with a dark expression. His robe shimmered with deep red threads, the color of old power. He spoke to a small group of other nobles. "The queen plays with danger," he said softly. "This human, this technician, is not worthy of standing beside her." Another, noble, Lady Sarin, nodded. "He is not of our blood, not of our people." Havel's eyes narrowed. "If she binds with him, it will stain the throne. The old ways will break." There was a pause. Then Sarin whispered, "Should we act?" Havel didn't answer out loud, but his silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Tom tried to live a normal life. He kept fixing devices, walking the halls, and avoiding questions. But it was becoming harder. People stared more now. Some smiled, some didn't. One evening, he visited a quiet tea shop on level 3 of the station. The owner, a kind old alien named Boru, greeted him warmly. "Ah, the human who caught the queen's eye," Boru said with a chuckle. Tom sighed. It wasn't on purpose. Boru poured a cup of glowing green tea. "Nothing great ever is. Sit, drink." Tom sat and looked around. A few Rhinari sat nearby. One of them, a young guard named Vel, gave him a respectful nod. "You should be careful," Boru said suddenly, his tone serious. "Not everyone smiles at change." Tom blinked. "What do you mean?" "There are some," Boru said, "who believe only pure blood should touch the crown." Tom frowned. "But Zara said the queen can choose anyone." "She can," Boru replied. "But old hearts fear new roads." Tom sipped the tea. It tasted like mint and sky. That night, someone tried to enter Tom's room. The alarm on the door buzzed at midnight. Tom woke up fast. He checked the screen and saw a shadowy figure walk away quickly before the guards arrived. The security team searched the halls but found nothing. Queen Zera called him the next morning. He entered her chamber with worry in his eyes. "I heard someone tried to break into your quarters," she said gently. Tom nodded. "I'm fine. They didn't get in." Zera walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered in silence. "There are those who fear what we may become," she said. "They whisper in the dark. They hide behind old rules." Tom looked at her. "You think it was someone from your own people?" "I do not wish to believe it," she said. "But truth does not care what we wish." She turned to face him. "I will protect you, Tom. But I cannot protect you from your own doubt. That battle is yours alone." Tom didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "I'm not afraid of being with you." Her eyes softened. "But I am afraid of failing you," he added. "What if I say yes and ruin everything?" Zera walked to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Failure is not in being afraid," she said. "Failure is in not choosing at all." Later that day, Tom went to the Central Dome, a large hall where people from many species gathered to walk, talk, and relax. He saw the stars above through the transparent ceiling. Planets passed slowly in the distance. He sat on a bench and watched people move by. Rin. Tom woke up feeling heavy inside. For 2 days, he had been thinking about Queen Zera's words. She had asked him to consider bonding with her, not just as a queen, but as a partner. It still felt like a dream. He was just a technician from Earth, and now he was being watched, followed, and talked about in whispers. When he entered the dining hall, he noticed several Raynari nobles sitting together. They stopped speaking as soon as they saw him. One of them, a tall noble with red markings, gave Tom a cold look. His name was Lord Vale, and he was known to be close to the royal court. Tom tried to ignore him and sat at a table, but soon he heard the soft hiss of voices behind him. He's only human. The Queen can't be serious. It's a disgrace. Tom clenched his jaw. He didn't turn around. He didn't want trouble. But it was clear now, not everyone supported Jera's choice. Later that day, Tom met Rena near the observation deck. She looked worried. "I heard something strange," she said. "Some of the Raynari nobles are planning a vote. They want to challenge the Queen's right to choose a human." "Can they do that?" Tom asked. "They can try," Rena replied, "but they'll fail. Jera has full power. Still, it shows they're angry, and anger can lead to danger." Tom looked out the window at the stars. "Why would she pick me, knowing this would happen?" "Because she believes in you," Rena said. "The real question is, do you believe in yourself?" Tom didn't answer. Not yet. That evening, Queen Jera sent him another message. "Come to the upper chambers. There is something you must see." Tom followed the silver-robed guard through the quiet palace halls. At the top level, the guard opened a crystal door. Inside, Jera waited. She stood near a large screen. As Tom entered, the screen showed images of different planets, some burning, some healing. "These are the results of our past," Jera said. "The Raynari have known both war and peace. I have led with calm hands, but some wish to return to strength through fear." She turned toward him. "You must understand, Tom. If I choose you, it is not just for myself. It is for a future I want to build. A future where kindness is not seen as weakness." Tom walked closer. "But I'm not a leader. I'm not wise." "Like you," Jera smiled. "That is why you are perfect. You do not hunger for power. And yet, your voice carries weight. You don't see it, but others do." Tom looked down. "And what if I fail?" "Then we fail together," Jera said. "But if you never try, we lose before we begin." Tom looked into her calm eyes and slowly nodded. "Then, I won't run away." Jera held out her hand. "Then walk beside me." Part 4. A Heart Tested. 3 days passed. The Queen's choice had now become official. News spread across the summit and beyond. Queen Jera had chosen a human technician named Tom as her bondmate. Some cheered, many were shocked, and some were very angry. On the day of the announcement, a ceremony was held in the central dome. Leaders of many species were invited. Flags of peace flew from tall towers. Raynari children threw flower lights into the air. Tom wore a simple but elegant robe, silver with blue lines. He stood beside Jera, who held the glowing bondstone. Their hands touched only slightly, but the moment felt heavy. Jera raised her voice. "Today, I choose not just a partner, but a path. I choose trust. I choose peace. And I choose a soul that shines not through power, but through truth." Tom didn't know what to say, but he managed a soft reply. "And I choose to walk with you." No matter how far. The crowd clapped. Some stood. Others remained still. But just as the bond stone began to glow brightly, a loud noise shook the hall. A deep boom echoed through the dome. The lights flickered. Smoke began to rise from the back. "Security breach!" shouted a guard. Jera turned sharply. "Protect the guests!" Suddenly, a group of masked attackers in red cloaks rushed into the room. They were Rhinari, but not. Guards. They moved fast, holding shock staffs and stun weapons. One of them shouted, "The Queen has broken tradition! She must not lead!" Tom was pulled back by a guard, but he shouted, "No! Don't leave her!" Jera stood calmly in front of the attackers. "Do you betray your people for pride?" A red-cloaked attacker raised his weapon, but before he could, "Fire!" Tom rushed forward. Using a nearby chair as cover, he hit a control panel on the wall. Sparks flew, and part of the attacker's weapons lost power. "Disable their charge ports!" he shouted to the guards. The royal guards fought back. A few were injured, but soon the attackers were captured or forced to retreat. Jera was unharmed, but many were shaken. Some guests had run. Others stayed frozen in shock. Tom walked back to Jera, chest heaving. "I told you." "I'm no warrior," he said. Jera looked at him with calm eyes. "But you are brave." He looked around at the chaos. "This is what they'll keep doing, isn't it? They won't stop." "No," she said, "but neither will we." She reached for the bond stone again. "This time, we finish the ceremony." Tom took her hand. Together, in the middle of a broken but healing room, they held the stone. It glowed with pure light, not from perfection, but from two hearts choosing each other despite the storm. The bondstone glowed between their joined hands. Tom stood beside Queen Jera, the light of the bonding ritual shining around them. The moment felt deep, peaceful, and powerful. Even with smoke still hanging in the air and some broken chairs, around them, the energy of the bond was real. Guards had surrounded the hall, keeping everyone safe. Most of the guests were still watching silently. They had just seen an attack. But now they saw something else, something stronger. Jera looked at Tom. "This moment matters more than any crown." Tom nodded. "Let's finish it." The stone's glow spread outward like a wave of calm light. Rhinari tradition said the bond was complete when the light touched every corner of the hall. It was a symbol of peace shared with all. But just as the wave was about to reach the edge, a new voice shouted from the upper balcony, "Stop this now!" Everyone turned. A tall Rhinari figure in black armor stood high above. It was Lord Vial, one of the nobles who had spoken against the Queen's choice. He raised a control device. "This is not the Rhinari way. This human has no right to stand beside our Queen." Jera lifted her voice. "Lord Vial, step down. This is not your moment." Vial's voice was cold. "If you will not listen to our counsel, then we will take the throne by force." Before anyone could react, a loud pulse shook the hall. Hidden, machines above the ceiling began to hum. Then, strange metal shields dropped down, locking doors and sealing exits. Tom stepped in front of Jera without thinking. "What is he doing?" Jera narrowed her eyes. "He's activating the palace override system. It's old, but dangerous." The lights dimmed. From hidden panels, robotic drones flew into the room. They weren't big, but they carried stun, weapons, and crowd control gear. Panic began to rise among the guests. "Stay calm!" Tom shouted. "We can stop this!" The queen turned to a nearby guard. "Where is Vel?" Vel was her most trusted fighter, a loyal Rhinari with a quiet strength. A moment later, Vel ran in from the side hall, his armor scratched from battle. "Apologies, Your Grace," Vel said. "I was delayed, but I am here." Jera pointed to the balcony. "Viel has taken control of the system. Get us access." Vel nodded and sprinted toward a control panel. Tom looked at the flying drones. He had an idea. "I need tools," he said quickly. "Something that can short-circuit their control signal." One of the royal technicians, standing nearby, handed Tom a toolkit. "Use this. You're the only human who knows our tech." Tom opened the box, his hands working fast. He remembered how the drones worked from his past system checks. They all linked to a central beacon. "If I can block their signal," he muttered, "they'll drop like flies." He connected a device to his wristband, rewired a few parts, and aimed it at the ceiling where the signal was strongest. "Here goes nothing." He pressed a button. A burst of sound and light shot out. Several of the drones froze in midair, then fell to the ground with soft thuds. The crowd gasped. Jera smiled faintly. "Well done." But Viel wasn't finished. He shouted from above, "You think one human can break our will?" He pressed another button. This time, the lights turned red. A wall panel opened, revealing a large mech unit. A towering security machine with energy shields and thick arms. It stepped forward with a loud thump. Tom's eyes widened. "Okay, that's new." Vel arrived at the control panel near the throne. "I can shut it down, but I need a few minutes." Jera looked at Tom. "Can you hold it?" Tom blinked. "Me? That thing is huge." "You fixed the drones," she said. "You can slow it." Tom took a breath, grabbed a small pulse emitter from the ground, and ran toward the mech. The crowd moved out of the way. The mech locked on him and fired a warning beam. Tom rolled to the side, sparks flying behind him. He reached a side panel and opened a small access port on the mech's leg. With shaking hands, he plugged in his device. "Come on. Come on." The mech paused, then buzzed, then shook. "Access denied," it said in a deep voice. Tom muttered, "That's not helpful." Jera watched from a distance, ready to step in, but she trusted him. She had seen courage in his heart. Finally, the pulse emitter found the mech's main power wire. Tom shouted, "Now!" He pressed the trigger. The mech's arm stopped mid-swing. Its lights dimmed. Slowly, like a falling tree, it leaned forward and dropped to the floor with a loud crash. The room was silent. Vel turned a final switch on the control panel. The red lights faded. The shields lifted. The palace systems returned to normal. Guards rushed to the balcony. Lord Viel was captured without a fight. Jera walked to Tom. He was still catching his breath. She offered her hand. This time, no one will interrupt. He stood, smiled weakly, and took her hand. They raised the bondstone together. This time, the glow reached every part of the hall. Every guest, every guard, every alien felt the light pass through them. It was complete, and it was true. The bond between Tom and Queen Jera was now official. After the final glow of the bondstone passed through the hall, silence filled the air. Not from fear, but from awe. The guests, nobles, and guards stood quietly, watching the strange and beautiful scene that had just unfolded. A human and a queen, a technician and a ruler. Two souls from different worlds now walking as one. Then, slowly, the Rhinari guests began to clap. First, it was just one or two, then more. Soon, even some of the nobles who once doubted Zara stood to show respect. The moment had changed something. It wasn't just a ceremony anymore. It had become a symbol. Later, after the crowd left and the hall was cleaned, Tom sat alone on a small balcony. The stars outside twinkled in the dark sky. He still couldn't believe any of it was real. He heard footsteps. Jera joined him, wearing a simple robe instead of her royal gown. She looked at peace. "Why are you out here?" she asked softly. "I needed air," Tom said. "Too many people staring." "They stare because they are curious," she said, sitting beside him. "You are something new to them." Tom chuckled. "Yeah, a human married to a queen." "You are more than that now," she said. "You are part of the royal house, and also my closest friend." Tom smiled at that. "But I'm still just me," he said. "That is why I chose you," she replied. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. Then Tom asked, "What happens now?" Jera looked thoughtful. "Now, we begin." In the following days, things changed quickly. Tom moved into a royal guest chamber inside the palace. It wasn't huge, but it was peaceful, with a floating window that showed the stars and gardens below. He had a small team of assistants now, though he didn't like being treated like someone important. He still fixed things when he could. He still walked the halls like before, but now people bowed to him. That felt strange. Queen Jera remained strong and graceful, but she also smiled more. She spent more time with Tom, not just at meetings, but in the gardens, the libraries, and sometimes the kitchen, where she watched him make simple earth dishes. She had never tasted toast before. She liked it with honey. Together they began building something new. Jera called it the Unity Plan. It was her dream to bring together young minds from different species, humans, Renari, and many others, to learn, live, and grow in peace. Tom helped with the design. He suggested adding practical training, not just books, things like repair work, farming, teamwork, and language exchange. He believed that real peace came when people worked together, not just talked together. Let them build things, he said. Fix things. That's how I learned about others. Jera agreed. She spoke about the plan in the High Council. Some nobles still resisted, but after the bond, they could no longer speak openly against her. The Unity Plan was approved. One day, Jera and Tom visited the building site on a nearby moon. It was called Shannara, a quiet place filled with soft, blue soil and floating lakes. Tom walked through the empty halls of the new academy. He could already picture students laughing, learning, sharing meals, and helping each other. He turned to Jera. "You really think this will work?" She nodded. "Not right away, but one step at a time." Tom smiled. "That's how I fix machines." She smiled too. "And how we fix the galaxy." Back at the palace, Tom received a message from Earth. It was from his old manager. "Tom, I just saw your name on the interplanetary news. The technician who married an alien queen?" I didn't believe it at first, but well done. Everyone's talking about you now. Hope you're doing okay. Tom laughed. He replied with a short, "Message, still fixing things. just on a bigger scale. He felt proud, not because people knew his name, but because he was doing something that mattered. One evening, Gera invited Tom to a special dinner with young students from the Rinari learning centers. They had heard stories about the Queen's bondmate and wanted to ask questions. Tom sat with them at a long table where the food floated gently above glowing dishes. A small Rinari boy asked, "Did you fight to win the Queen?" Tom smiled. "No, I made a joke." "A joke?" "Yes," Tom said. "I said marry me when I fixed her translator." The students laughed. Gera added, "And I was hoping he'd say that." The room filled with soft laughter and joy. After dinner, Gera and Tom walked through the garden under the stars. The flowers glowed. The wind was soft. "I never thought my life would be like this," Tom said. "Neither did I," Gera replied. He looked at her. "Do you ever regret it?" Choosing. "Me?" She stopped walking and looked into his eyes. Not for a single moment. Tom reached out and held her hand. He wasn't nervous anymore. He didn't feel like just a technician. He felt ready. Ready to build. Ready to stand beside her. Ready to be something more. And so on that peaceful night, under the stars, and the soft light of the garden, their new journey continued, not as queen and technician, but as partners of peace, carrying hope across the stars. The story of Queen Gera and Tom, the human technician, had now traveled across many planets. It was told in cities and villages, on space stations and farms. Some called it a tale of courage. Others called it a story of love. But many simply called it a new beginning. Tom, who once fixed translation machines in quiet halls, was now walking in royal chambers, speaking in council meetings and helping design learning centers for the next generation. Yet he stayed humble. He still liked his tea simple, his shoes comfortable, and his jokes honest. Gera remained calm and wise, but many noticed a small change in her, too. She smiled more. She listened longer. She spent more time among her people, walking through schools and markets, not just royal rooms. They were not just ruler and partner. They were a team. One quiet morning, Gera and Tom visited the Unity Academy on Shannara. The building was now full of life. Young students from many species studied, played, and worked together. Tom watched a group of children build a small farming pod. One child, a human girl, was teaching a small green alien how to hold a tool correctly. They learned faster than, "We did," Tom said. Gera nodded. "Because they are not carrying the weight of the past. We give them a clean page." Tom walked over to a class and fixed a small, loose panel in the floor. One of the students smiled at him. "You're the Queen's husband, right?" Tom laughed. "Yes, but I'm also the repair guy." "Can you teach us how to fix things?" Tom nodded. "I'd be happy to." Later, in a gathering room filled with students, Gera gave a short speech. In every corner of the galaxy, there is fear. Some fear change. Some fear what they do not know. But we are here today, not because we are the same, but because we choose to understand each other. Tom stood beside her, then stepped forward. "When I came here, I didn't think I mattered. I was just a quiet worker. But someone believed in me, and that changed everything." He looked at the students. "You don't need to be powerful to make a difference. You just need to care. You just need to try." The students clapped, and some even stood. Tom felt something in his heart. Not pride, not fame. Peace. That evening, Jera and Tom sat under a glass dome on Shannara, looking at the stars. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. "Sometimes," Tom said. "Mostly the trees, and real butter." Jera smiled. "We can bring trees, and I will ask the kitchen about butter." They both laughed softly. Then Jera looked serious. "We've done something strange, haven't we?" "What do you mean?" "A queen and a technician, different species, different paths. But somehow we met. We chose each other, and now the galaxy watches us." Tom nodded. "Yes, but I don't care what they say. I'm just glad I met you." She looked at him with warmth in her eyes. "As am I." The next few weeks were full of progress. New learning centers were approved, on 3 more planets. Peace talks began between 2 species who hadn't spoken in decades, both inspired by the Unity Academy's success. Jera continued leading her people with fairness and wisdom. Tom helped behind the scenes, fixing systems, guiding the design of programs, and sitting with young leaders to teach them patience and understanding. Some challenges still came. A few nobles still spoke against change. But they were fewer now. Their voices were softer. The galaxy had begun to change, and no one could deny it. Jera and Tom had become symbols, not of perfection, but of possibility. One day, a group of historians came to interview Tom. "Do you remember the exact moment your life changed?" one of them asked. Tom smiled. "Yes, I was fixing a broken translator and I made a joke." "What did you say?" "I said, 'Marry me, Your Highness.' I was just trying to be funny." "And what did the Queen say?" Tom looked at Jera, who stood across the garden speaking with children. He smiled softly. "She said, 'I was hoping you'd say that.'" The historians laughed gently. They thanked him for the story. But even after they left, Tom sat in the garden for a while. He looked around, the blue flowers, the floating trees, the stars above. He had come far, not because he had a plan, not because he was special, but because he chose to speak from the heart, and because someone listened. Jera joined him and took his hand. "Still thinking about the old days?" she asked. "Just remembering how strange and beautiful everything became," he said. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder. "Then let us keep building something even more beautiful." Together, they stood. Human and queen. Not a fairy tale, not a dream, but a true story of kindness, courage, and a bond that reached beyond worlds. And somewhere in a classroom far away, a young student wrote a short line in her notes. "Peace begins when 2 hearts speak and choose to walk forward together."